Big thanks to Dulaxi for sponsoring this deep dive. Today, we're going to be exploring the music of Perth musician Adam Lloyd Davis. He creates music as Nativity Scene, and we're diving into his latest EP. It's called Sometimes We Arrive at the Shortfall. I gotta say, the name of the EP alone, it just totally grabbed my attention.
It's a captivating title. It really is. It kind of hints at, a sense of resilience, of finding beauty in the unexpected turns that life takes. And that's precisely what Davis does with this music, I think.
Yeah, and he's known for this really unique blend of ambient and folk and even cinematic elements. I read that he's inspired by Ennio Morricone, which, makes sense when you consider that his home base is Perth. And that's the world's westernmost city, so that, that Wild West vibe kind of seems to seep into his music.
It's fascinating how he weaves those influences together. You can definitely hear those, vast open spaces in the music's ambience, but then there's this emotional intensity, a rawness that's reminiscent of those classic Western film scores.
Yeah, totally. And this EP is especially interesting because it marks a shift in his style. His previous work was known for being pretty somber, but here there's a sense of hopefulness, a resilience that really shines through.
It's a reflection of his personal journey. He started making music on his iPhone back in 2013 while he was actually bedridden due to an illness. It was his creative outlet, a way to process what he was going through. And I think this EP speaks to his journey of healing and finding strength amidst adversity. It was released, by the way, just this past month, March 8th.
Wow, creating those intricate soundscapes using just an iPhone. That's pretty remarkable. It really speaks to the power of finding creative expression, even in the face of challenges. So how does this theme of resilience and hope play out in the EP itself? Where would you say it all begins?
Well, the opening track, it's called The Prophet, and it sets the tone beautifully. You're immediately drawn in by this ethereal, almost ghostly, choir-like vocal effect. It's minimal, but it creates this sense of awe and intrigue, like you've stumbled upon something sacred.
I love when music can transport you like that. Just from that description, I'm already getting a sense of the journey this EP takes us on. It's not just sounds, it's a whole experience.
Exactly. And then the acoustic guitar comes in, its notes resonating with this soft precision, and there's a steady drum beat. It anchors the song, but it never overpowers that overall sense of spaciousness. It's like standing on the edge of something vast and unknown.
And to think he's crafting this expansive sound using only an iPhone. I'm curious, are there any hints about what specific apps or techniques he uses?
Unfortunately, the sources don't provide specific details on his process, but it really makes you appreciate the ingenuity and the resourcefulness behind it all.
Absolutely. So from this grand, awe-inspiring opening with The Prophet, where does the EP take us next?
The second track, A Son is Born, unfolds with this quiet grace that's almost hypnotic. Those lush, choral-like vocals return, and they evoke a sense of reverence, of new beginnings.
The title, A Son is Born, definitely hints at themes of new beginnings and hope. What's interesting to me is that it follows the prophet. It's almost as if it's suggesting that the prophet's message has resulted in this new birth, the sense of hope emerging.
That's a great observation. It adds another layer to the narrative thread running through the EP. Musically, this track is all about intimacy and vulnerability. You have these soft percussion elements and delicate guitar lines, all working together to create a feeling of tenderness and fragility.
It sounds like he's creating a very intimate space for the listener to experience these emotions.
Exactly. And the production is masterful. There's a sense of stillness and restraint that actually enhances the emotional impact. It's not trying to overwhelm you with sound. It's inviting you to lean in and listen closely.
Okay, so we've got this expansive opening with The Prophet, then a shift into a more intimate soundscape with A Son is Born, both hinting at themes of hope and new beginnings. I'm really feeling this narrative journey through the EP. Where does he take us next?
Well, this is where things get really interesting. The third track is the title track. Sometimes we arrive at the shortfall. And it's here that Davis directly confronts the complexities of life. It's here that Davis directly confronts, those complexities of life.
I'm intrigued. After that hopeful opening, I'm ready for things to get a bit more complex. What's the feeling he creates in this one?
Well, right away you're met with these eerie ambient sounds, and they create this captivating yet unsettling atmosphere. Imagine like a vast, desolate landscape under a starry night sky. That's the sonic world he paints here.
It sounds almost cinematic. I can practically see that desert landscape unfolding in my mind. Definitely a shift from the intimacy of the previous track.
Definitely. And then a solemn guitar echoes through this vastness. And it's as if he's giving voice to a sense of longing, of searching.
Wow. From reverence and new beginnings to longing and searching. It's incredible how he takes us on these emotional shifts through sound. What else stands out to you about this track?
The rhythmic composition in this one is incredibly intricate. He uses these deep rumbling beats that ground the track, while the percussion adds this pulsing quality that almost makes the silence between the notes as powerful as the melodies themselves. It's not just about the sounds he's creating, it's about the spaces he leaves for us to contemplate, to feel.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, I'm going to give you the emotional landscape, but I'm also going to give you space to experience it in your own way. Which makes me think, as impressive as this EP is, I can't help but wonder how his sound might evolve if he had access to a full studio setup.
That's a really interesting thought. Perhaps, the limitations of the iPhone have forced him to be even more creative, more resourceful in how he manipulates sound. It's like those constraints have become part of his unique signature.
It makes you really appreciate the intentionality behind every element, every note, every bit of silence. Nothing feels accidental here. It all contributes to this overall feeling of searching and acceptance, which I think ties back to the EP's title beautifully.
Exactly. And this idea of arriving at the short fall, it's not presented as a failure, but rather as a point of reflection. It's about acknowledging that things don't always go according to plan and finding a sense of peace in that uncertainty.
It's about embracing those unexpected turns in the road. Sometimes we arrive at the short fall sounds like a beautiful acceptance of that reality.
And that acceptance, that resilience, that's what I find so inspiring about this EP. It's a reminder that even in the face of adversity, even when we feel like we're falling short, there's still beauty to be found, strength to be discovered, and hope to be embraced.
I think that's something we can all relate to, especially those of us who are familiar with the, ambient and folk genres. We're drawn to music that explores those deeper emotions, those introspective journeys. But there's something about how Davis approaches these themes that feels particularly resonant.
I agree. And the fact that he's able to convey such a complex and nuanced message, using only an iPhone adds another layer of intrigue to his artistry.
It's like he's challenging our preconceived notions of what music creation can be. It's inspiring to think that something so simple, so readily available can be used to create something so profound.
Speaking of inspiring, one thing that struck me about this title track is how its unhurried pacing encourages a certain type of listening. He's not rushing us through the experience. He's inviting us to slow down and savor each note and to really absorb the emotions he's conveying. It's almost meditative.
I love that. It's like he's giving us permission to step out of the constant rush of everyday life and just be present with the music, with those feelings of searching and acceptance.
Yes. It's a reminder that we don't always have to be striving, pushing forward. Sometimes the most profound moments come when we allow ourselves to simply be.
So what does this all mean for our listeners, someone who might be discovering creativity nativity scene for the first time? Why should they care about this music, about this journey through sound and emotion?
Well, I think if you're someone who appreciates music that's both beautiful and thought-provoking, music that invites you to feel deeply and reflect on your own experiences, then you'll find something truly special in Nativity Scene's work.
Especially with this EP, it's more than just a collection of songs. It's an invitation to embrace resilience, to find beauty in unexpected places, and to connect with that quiet strength that resides within us all.
It's a reminder that even when we feel lost, uncertain, or like we're falling short, there's always hope. There's always beauty to be found.
Beautifully said. And I think that's the perfect note to end on. A huge thanks to Dulaxi once again for sponsoring this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure exploring this music with you.
And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep diving deep. Until next time.
Absolutely, it has. It really is inspiring music.
It is. And before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to ponder. We've talked about how Davis creates these incredible sonic landscapes and how the EP takes us on this journey from awe and reverence to longing and ultimately acceptance. But how does Davis's use of minimalism, those intentional spaces and silences, actually enhance the emotional impact of the music?
That's a great question. I think those moments of silence, those spaces between the notes, they allow us to fully absorb the emotions he's conveying. They give us space to reflect, to connect with our own experiences, and to find our own meaning within the music. It's like he's creating a dialogue between the sound and the silence, and we as listeners, we become part of that conversation.
I love that analogy of a dialogue. It's not just passive listening. It's an active engagement with the music and ultimately with ourselves. It makes me think of those classic Zen gardens where the empty spaces are just as important as the rocks and the sand. They create a sense of balance and harmony.
Exactly, and I think that's what Davis achieves with his music. He's not trying to fill every space with sound. He's using those silences to create a sense of depth and texture, to draw us deeper into the emotional landscape of the music.
And for a listener who might be new to this kind of music or even to ambient and folk genres in general, what would you say is the key takeaway from this EP? What's the one thing you'd want them to remember?
I'd say the key takeaway is the power of resilience. It's about finding beauty and strength in unexpected places. In those moments when we feel like we're falling short, it's a reminder that our journeys are rarely linear and that it's often in those detours, those shortfalls, where we discover our greatest strengths.
It's a powerful message, and it's so beautifully expressed through Davis's music. You can really hear that resilience, that acceptance, woven into every note and every silence.
I couldn't agree more.
So to our listeners, if you're looking for music that will challenge you to feel deeply, to reflect, and to find beauty in unexpected places, I highly recommend checking out Nativity Scenes. Sometimes we arrive at the shortfall. It's an experience that will stay with you long after the last note fades away.
And maybe it will even inspire you to explore the power of silence in your own life.
That's a beautiful thought to leave our listeners with. A huge thanks again to Dulaxi for sponsoring this deep dive, and to you, our listener, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep diving deep. Until next time.